Hello, my nieces. Hello, my nephews and extended family. This is your twin flame auntie here to bring you out of the 5D and back to Earth. In the last video, we spoke about Kurt from New World Allstar. And while I have mixed feelings about his channel, I'm intrigued by his insistence that our twin flame is just a past life version of us running around the earth at the same time. Kurt is not the only creator to employ this theory, and I don't think he is the first. And while I initially scoffed at this idea, a deeper look at my own personal twin flame journey has me intrigued. One of these days, I'm going to tell you about my twin flame in depth, but that's going to be about a 10-part series because a lot happened. But until then, I want to explore the issue of parallel lives and how past life issues can carry on to the next one. I just want to take some of the facts, put them out there, and then have you decide, could my twin flame potentially be a past life of mine? And maybe it carries on to your situation. I don't know, but I think it's interesting to explore. So when I first met my twin flame, I was an aspiring rock star in New York City. I had a record deal, and there were multiple times where it seemed like I was about to break into the big time. And I had some very tangible success in the music industry, but it came in drips and drabs in short chapters. And sometimes I would find myself on the radio or on TV 1 minute, and then the next minute I'm applying for a waitressing job. And this pattern went on for about 20 years. And eventually, I realized that while I loved music, I didn't like the music industry very much. And on the flip side, while I didn't necessarily love waiting tables, the hospitality industry grew on me, and I started to really love the people. And as I got better at my job as a server, I started seeing more of the long-term potential in it, and especially as I got disillusioned with the music industry. And I found that the various waitressing, bartending, and hospitality jobs that I held down, it carried just as much meaning in my life as my music and brushes with fame did. And to this day, there's many fellow service industry workers that I keep in touch with. Some of them I held down jobs in the 90s. And at one point, my music career just came crumbling down seemingly overnight. This led me to return to the hospitality for the upteenth time, and it took me back with open arms. And because of this, I found a new appreciation for it in my heart, even if it wasn't the most glamorous path. And I also want to mention that over the years, I have struggled with drinking a little bit, maybe more than a little bit. And this is significant because during my bubble love phase, I was completely sober. And the day that I took a drink, my bubble love phase ended. And now let's talk about my twin flame. We're going to call him David, not his real name. When I first met David, David worked as a temp, and he also had a rock band that he was trying to get off the ground. And we both had this agreement that neither one of us was looking for anything serious, but we didn't know we were about to experience a bubble of fame. Sorry, not a bubble of fame. That must be a Freudian slip. A bubble love phase. So at that time, I was technically a lot further along in my career than he was, but little did I know that that would change over the years. So when he broke up with me in 2007, he started working as a bartender, and he actually came to me for advice. And the last time that I saw him in person was when I was giving him advice on how to bartend. He faked some experience on his resume, and he had to try to ace an interview, so I helped him out with that. But shortly after, when I found out that he had a girlfriend, I went through the dark night of the soul, which lasted many, many years. And he moved across the country to be with his new girlfriend eventually. And I was heartbroken, but I was very determined to move on. So I stayed off his social media. So even though I did think about him quite a bit, I wasn't in that huge chaser energy. And I didn't actually get into a new period of sobriety until 16 years later. Sure, I had a couple weeks sober here and there, but not an extended period. And it was when I returned to this extended period of sobriety that I felt David's 5D presence. It was so overwhelming. It was the telepathy, the signs, the synchronicities. So this prompted me to go online and look him up. I found a podcast he was on, and he was talking about his bartending job, which was pretty crazy, And he talked all about his life and the life that he'd been living over the last 16 years. And I found out that he actually became a rock star in his own right. He played in a blues band for an extremely successful blues artist, and he toured the world for a few years. He lived in hotels, he had groupies, the whole thing. And just like me, his music career ended overnight when he got fired from his job. Now, I don't know why he got fired, but I'm going to kind of take an educated guess. Usually on the road, the thing that's going to get you fired is probably partying a lot or just living that rock star lifestyle. And it seemed like he was doing that. So he returned to bartending, and he found a new appreciation for the job, kind of like I did. And he went into hospitality as a career. And although he is mainly a bartender where he works, he's required to wait tables there one night a week. So yeah, I did way too much research on him. One night a week he does wait tables. I think all the bartenders do there. I want to mention that it also appears that maybe he drank a lot, just like I did. Now, fortunately, he didn't really bring that around me during our relationship. But as I look through years of social media, it looks like alcohol was at the forefront of his life and a lot of his decisions, which is common for musicians on the road. So he basically went everywhere, like any country that you can imagine that had a blues show. He flew there and he lived in hotels. So while he has settled into his new bartending career, I compare photos of him on stage versus behind the bar. And I do believe that there's a huge part of him that misses his rock star days. I can just see it in his eyes. Now, when I look at the pictures of David when he's on stage playing, shows all over the world, he's smiling ear to ear and he's glowing. Behind the bar, he's a little more stoic. So he's a lot less present on social media, and he doesn't really post publicly like he used to. But the pictures that he keeps up are from his rock star days. So this could potentially make sense that he could be a past life reincarnation of me. It would make sense that I would have that feeling of tug of war between slaying it in the music industry and then, serving beers and burgers at a restaurant, because it was a constant theme in my life. Although for me, I've settled more into hospitality. But here's where it gets super, super strange. So David and I, we met and we dated in New York. Our relationship took place in New York. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago before I moved to New York City. And David came from another part of the country. And when he was in New York City and he eventually left, he went to the Midwest for this new person. But they eventually moved to Chicago and lived in the same county that I did when I was a kid. And so, us twin flames, we are detectives. So I was curious where he had lived. So I looked up his old address. And here's the crazy thing. It turns out that he lived on the opposite end of the train that I used to take as a child. Eventually, He left Chicago. And years after he left Chicago, I returned to my childhood home during the pandemic. So I live in this very sleepy town where nothing really happens, right? Nothing happens here. And one day I looked at the calendar for my local library, and it turns out that the singer of the band that first took him around the world, he played with a couple, was playing at my local library that day. And that singer was a friend of his who I had met in New York years prior. And that was just a little too synchronistic to not mean anything. So, in addition to the push and pull between the service industry and the music industry and the complications with alcohol, there's also this thing about this very specific region in the Chicagoland area. And even though David was a musician in New York, Chicago is where he became a rock star. So, what if I was the future incarnation of David and he was the past incarnation of me? Could it make sense that I would return to the area where David became a rock star, because it all started in Chicago and then he toured the world, and that I would try to do it all over again? Only what's interesting is that instead of becoming a rock star, I made peace with the service industry and I found happiness in the service industry, which is I could have never seen that one coming, you know? So, I want to ask you something. Let's say David is my past life incarnation as my twin flame. Do I want to have a romantic relationship with a slightly less evolved version of me, with a version of me that has not yet found all the soul lessons that this previous version has? I don't think I do. I think I'd rather have a relationship with someone who isn't me in a past life. And this makes separation much easier. And it can also explain why the bubble love phase was so intense and why that 5D era was so intense as well. So I just want you to keep this in mind as you are missing your twin flame. Now, I don't know if my twin flame is my past life incarnation, but all these factors in our journeys point to it being possible. So my nieces, so my nephews, thank you so much for listening. I don't know what I'm going to talk about in the next video yet. I think I have to think it over. If you have any suggestions, please put it in the comments below. And just remember, your twin flame auntie loves you, and it's all going to be okay.